Testing, testing. Shortcut is a bad card, according to Scott. Overrated.
Not bad.
Eh.
Hello, Mythos Busters fans. This is your editor-in-chief, Scott, speaking. I just wanted to let you know that this is the live recording of a panel we did at BusterCon 2024 with the devs of Arkham Horror, the card game. We've released a couple live episodes before, so I just want to give the same heads up as always. I mean, the audio quality is going to be what it's going to be. We were passing around a single microphone. Sometimes it cut out. I tried my best to remove those cutouts and any time we were passing the microphone around, as well as amplify any time there was something in the background that the mic picked up that, was funny and such like that. But at the end of the day, with a live episode, you get what you get and you don't get upset. So we hope you enjoy. Thanks, everyone.
All right, let's do this. Please don't clap at me. I'm very scared.
Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Well, hello, and welcome from BusterCon 2024. I'm Sean, and joining me on this very special evening, the Friday night of BusterCon 2024, are your Arkham devs. We've got Duke.
Hi.
We've got...
Hello, I'm...
And we've got Waleed. It worked.
Hey, everybody. My name is Waleed.
So we have had a couple of blasty blast days playing Arkham, playing a lot of epic multiplayer. Go to the Black Woods of the Goat dropped in its final form. We've had a great weekend, and we're going to sit down and talk to your devs about some Arkham stuff. So I think I kind of want to hop mostly right into it, but one thing I do want to call attention to is just kind of nuts and bolts. Waleed,
What?
welcome.
Hey, thank
This is your first one with us here.
No, I was here last year.
You were here last year. This is your first panel. First panel. But I think it bears mentioning that in the background, you had not done a whole lot of work on Hemlock, which is going to be a big part of the discussion tonight. So we've got a few general questions we're going to pepper in for you. So you guys can get to know Waleed while we talk about everything else as well.
Yeah, my favorite color is no.
And I will beg everyone who's listening at home to forgive us. We are passing a single mic around because the sound system here is a little bit janky and recording is a little bit of a hack job. So we'll do our best with it. So let's talk about Hemlock. Let's talk about the Feast of Hemlock Vale. The best thing about Mythos Busters for me is that I get to dive into anyone can do this. I don't know if anyone would think to do this, but I dive into the campaign guides and I get to read it cover to cover nowadays. And it makes me understand the story and the construction and all of the cool things about each of these campaigns in a way that I never did before and probably wouldn't if I wasn't working on this. And I have to say, a big fan of Hemlock. I wish I had actually played it more, but I am supremely familiar with the characters and the setting. So I think just to start off, kind of what were the primary inspirations? Where did the seed of the idea start?
I remember talking to MJ one time about we wanted to do something a lot more small scale following Scarlet Keys, something that was more grounded and again, small scale. And I remember we were talking, and it was like, okay, well, let's have a creepy folk horror culty village. And she was like, oh, yeah, they'll be full of, awful things and, things hidden in the cellars. And I was like, well, what if they just went there and everyone was really nice?
So naturally, you did both.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's you got to do that for Arkham. But asking for inspiration, a huge inspiration for it was the films Midsommar and Annihilation. You probably have seen that. Definitely informed a lot of the aesthetic. The Wicker Man, of course, is a pillar of folk horror and a really, really big part of it. And also The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask. because I like the clockwork playthrough and trying to figure out where people are and what time of day it is and all that.
Anything to add?
I agree with everything Duke said. No, when I came onto Hemlock, it was already well underway. But I latched onto the inspiration immediately. I always felt like Arkham could benefit from a smaller scale story every so often and more human interactions. And Hemlock was exactly that. So I was very excited that it lined up with what I was wanting from Arkham at the time, and I was really excited to get started on it.
So starting off on kind of the structure of the campaign, I think one of the hallmarks of Hemlock that sticks out most readily is the persistence of the preludes. So we'd seen a similar mechanic with the opening of the Circle Undone. Far simpler, obviously, and a little bit more sequestered mechanically, but kind of where did the prelude idea come from, and how did you decide how complex, like how high to raise the ceiling?
When conceiving of the campaign as like 3 days and 3 nights, one of the big ideas behind it was that during the day it's nice and it's cool and you feel great, and during the night you're like, oh crap, what's going on? And so the preludes were a way to make the investigators sort of be able to kit up and get ready to go out on their expedition. I wanted the preludes to be more than the Circle Undone. I wanted them to feel like you're taking an extended mulligan in a lot of ways, but you're also interacting and the village is becoming more of a character to you, just as you're getting to know the characters. So that was a big part of the preludes, was to give players that, hey, we're going out and preparing, but also like I wanted people to feel like they were interacting with the village, moving around in Arkham the way that you're accustomed to.
So kind of tying in with that, and I know this ties a lot in with Majora's Mask because I love that game as well. So the day-night cycle, at what point did that enter the chat?
I mean, that was definitely there from the beginning. The idea, like that was from the onset, like I'd like to think that we had a very strong vision for what the campaign was going to be. And it was very much a 3 days, 3 nights, and those experiences like kind of marking a big contrast between the tone of the day and the night, and also, it was there from the very beginning. But the murals were kind of an unexpected gift that we found along the way. Like it was like, oh wow, this would be amazing if we did this. So,
and they are. Do you guys have a particular favorite, I guess, combination of a single thing that happens in day and night, like a particular favorite application of that dynamic?
I do, and this will be a little biased because this is the scenario that I worked on the most, but The Lost Sister was a unique opportunity to explore enemies that played with both day and night in the span of a single scenario, and so you kind of got to see that without having to worry about when you play it in the timeline, because these enemies there's darkness and there's light, and they're going to flip back and forth as they move around. So that was a nice way to take, and I love that Duke gave me that scenario to work on because it was so much fun, but to take the concept of day and night across the campaign and just distill it down to one scenario, and what would that look like and what can we do with it. So that's my favorite part.
I mean, it has a good way of sneaking up on you, kind of like, spoiler alert, like if you keep loading up the Chaos Bag with cultist tokens, you're like, oh, this is great. They're helping me out. Then you get to the finale and, well, good luck. But yeah, it was really fun. I think the thing I enjoyed the most about it was the enemy design, seeing how the enemies could potentially behave very differently, even with just one keyword or one effect based on, if it was day or night, and seeing how an enemy could be a big problem in one way during the day and a different kind of problem at night. So,
well, I particularly appreciate the lobstrosities, because I am now keeping a running tally of Dark Tower references within the game, and I know it's not the first one, but that was when I was like, yeah, we did it, chick. Are you also a Dark Tower fan? Because I know Nick is, obviously, but Duke. Yes, all right. Waleed, do you have a favorite like series or literature, or like a favorite set of books? Anything you'd like to mention as far as like creative inspiration?
Yeah, it's not tonally the same as Arkham is, but something that was really huge in informing kind of how I approach creativity is Terry Pratchett's Discworld. I think. Oh yeah, claps for Discworld. Anybody? Yeah. Yeah, so like I said, tonally very, just a little bit different than Arkham, but I find that taking things that we take for granted and then kind of twisting them in unique ways, like Terry Pratchett did in his Discworld series, has been really cool way to approach the design process.
So another big piece that kind of sticks out to me about Hemlock is obviously the residents and interacting with them, and the codices as a mechanic to work through the campaign guide and that NPC interaction. How did you land on that, and were there any prototypes on how that interaction went before you landed there?
I had an idea, like the codex was sort of in my imagination before I even got on at FFG, but I would say the big reason that it took shape the way that it did was obviously we wanted to let you develop relationships with the residents, and we didn't have that many story cards. So like a big piece of it was giving players a way to interact with the same resident, the same card, but in many different iterations. So it was really just the only way that we could tell the story that we wanted to tell, with showing these characters and having different arcs throughout the campaign.
I'm just going to second that, because it was really, in my opinion, it kind of blew the door open on having a more evolving story. Like Arkham, since its start, has always been that sort of game where you make choices and things change in the future of the campaign based on those choices. But this was really an opportunity to do that, again, within a scenario to a degree that we really haven't been able to do before. And that was really exciting to see, like, oh, okay, we have this opportunity for these characters to have different effects. And even within the same scenario, the character can have multiple different codices. And that was really, really cool. It came back. But I'm done talking, so I'm going to hand it off anyway.
All right, well, here comes the softball follow-up. Do you have any particular favorites among the characters in Hemlock Vale? And you do not get to pick the bear.
Now I'm struggling to remember their names. But there were a couple of characters that I was kind of not in charge of, but that I led the narrative writing for. And who's the badass hunter gal? Judith. I wrote her story, among a couple others, but she was a lot of fun to write for. This person who's really confident and really collected and not really shaken by the mythos. It was fun to write someone who's strong and capable like that. So she's definitely my favorite one.
Do you also hate jazz?
No, I like jazz.
Yeah, when conceiving of Judith, actually, I thought a lot of Detective Rosa Parks from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Like, I just read all of her dialogue in that voice in my head.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. I mean, you can go back and they're all really special to me, and like very, very special to me. But I'd say Theo is probably my favorite character. I identified a lot with moving around a lot and kind of the family dynamic that he has with his siblings. And, Theo and I both wound up in weird, creepy cults at certain points in our lives. So, but yeah, it's also fun writing himbos. So yeah, definitely my favorite.
To the extent you're comfortable, say more.
Okay. I'll be very forthcoming. I was in reparative therapy in a church early 2010s. Definitely really awful, and it really informed a lot of the narrative. Thinking about a leader who truly earnestly cares for their followers, and yet is putting them through hell, endangering them. That's definitely, like, it speaks to me a lot. So writing Mother Rachel for that purpose, it was really. I'm just trailing off here. It was very personal.
I was actually going to ask you about Mother Rachel next, because I thought she was a fascinating character. Because obviously you don't want to peel back all the layers of crazy too quickly. How did you find the happy medium of presenting that character in a way that doesn't immediately signal to the investigators of what's going on, but obviously, assuming no one flipped the NPC card over like I did. But how did you kind of layer that subtlety in?
I mean, I don't think there was any fooling the players that Mother Rachel was not going to be terrible at some point in the story. There was no question that you're not expecting something to go down. But for me, I thought it was really, she's a complicated character. Again, spoilers for the first night, but she genuinely can help you in that situation, and it's not necessarily calculated. When I thought about her, I thought of her like a Miyazaki character, not completely evil, not completely good, but intends to do the right thing. And it's often when you're intending to do the right thing that you can do the worst possible thing.
So, I mean, kind of talking through the other pieces, the other NPCs, I think one of the other interesting ones would be River and Nathaniel, and kind of the heritage of the island being in question and the differing approaches on how those two characters would like to handle things. How did I guess the question I'm reaching at is, there is a way to reconcile with them both. With resolutions like that, how do you kind of decide how deep to bury that, as far as like how specific a choice the players have to make?
I mean, to me, it came down to thinking of how handling that situation in real life would go. You've got two people who are fighting over their inheritance. It's causing a great contention, and siding with either one is not going to necessarily heal that rift. You can't necessarily. You've been there for 2.5 days. You can't come in and solve all their familial problems. So like I try to do things that, or I try to look at it as very character driven and very trying to think of what real people in the real world would do and how they would have to handle situations like that. So I don't know if that's a full answer, but it's an answer.
It was a half-baked question, so it's fine. I'm trying to think the other Simeon. Let's talk about Simeon for a second. Bringing a child character into such a creepy setting and such a dangerous setting has. Why are you rubbing your temples at me? Whose idea was Simeon? I found it. Sorry. I was doing Sean levels of preamble. I'm so sorry. I found Simeon to be a charming character and really fun for a very mature setting, but it wasn't to the point where like the kid character getting up to hijinks took me out of it, So like how did that idea come into this particular setting?
I mean, when you're a kid, you just kind of take everything as a given around you. Like you could be growing up in a cult, and you just think that's how people are. And I mean, again, when I thought of Simeon and when I wrote the dialogue for him, I was thinking of the bombers from Majora's Mask, like, oh, you can't do anything, like, you can join our club. And so I was thinking of this kid who's playful, but like is clearly being affected in ways that he doesn't even know, and that he's not necessarily being cared for in the way that, like, clearly the community is not good for him, but he's kind of blissfully ignorant in a lot of ways. And so like hilariously, your way of combating the cult is definitely through his playfulness in one of the endings.
So coming off of Scarlet Keys, obviously the most expansive and open-ended structure to the campaign that we've seen, how in developing Feast did you balance the open world of the campaign with crafting the coherent narrative? Were there any specific challenges or anything you guys felt you did particularly well?
So like I said, when I came on, a lot of the structure and everything was already kind of determined. And I also was a designer. I had just started as a designer when Scarlet Keys came out, so I also had a different perspective on that campaign than I would have if I was, a full-fledged player. So I guess what I'm proud of with Scarlet Keys is that, with Hemlock Vale, is that with Duke's direction in mind, we were able to create a campaign that still felt open and still felt like you're able to make choices on where to go and what to do, but the structure was, there was much more structure in place around that to support the feeling of progression, both narrative and mechanical progression from one scenario to the next. And Scarlet Keys had a lot of that built in. But when it's so open, that's a lot harder to really land, and it lands differently for everybody. And with Hemlock, we had that ability to go like, okay, we know it's a 1, 2, 3 as far as the day scenarios go, so we can say like, testing. There we go. We can say that it's like day 1 is supposed to be easy, day 2 is hello. There we go. Anyway, I really enjoyed the structure that we had with Hemlock Vale and being able to do sort of a open world light, and I feel like that really helped that campaign.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to give people the chance to make decisions on where to go and when to go there. And so that was a big part of the concept for the campaign. But really, all of it came out of, it has an actual story that's playing out. You can follow it, and you're, really encouraged to follow it, especially on your first playthrough, to follow one of the characters around. But I would say, yeah, it all came out of, it wasn't even necessarily a response to anything that came before, but we wanted to just, it really came from, we want to explore what this could look like on this day. There was a very, very big Excel spreadsheet that I know Nick has seen where I tracked like every single resident, where are they, what do you do, what are they doing, what's happening to them. And so it really just came from trying to support 8 unique characters going across the island.
It wasn't a spreadsheet, but I had a similar guide for Majora's Mask. That makes a lot of sense. Waleed, when you game and or design, whatever's applicable here, do you prefer open world or more guided experiences?
Yeah, so I grew up playing Legend of Zelda as well, actually. It's one of my favorite series, and Fable and Halo. So it was a lot of instanced areas where you could go explore, and each instance would be the same, but what you did in that instance, really changed what you do. Now in this like new age of gaming, I find that open world can be very valuable. Going back to Legend of Zelda, right, Tears of the Kingdom was a very good game because it kind of let you off the leash and let you be free and gave you tools to explore the world. But I also feel like open world can be very intimidating for a lot of people. You definitely get paralysis of choice. You have too many options. You don't know where to go. You don't know what to do. So for that instance, for that reason, I really do enjoy kind of, if you can marry the two. Instances can be really powerful, but if you have an open world that leads to instances, then I think that could, merging those two and creating a hybrid, can create a really unique path throughout the game. Now, digitally, I prefer a set rather than an open world, because a lot of open world games, I'm thinking of like Seventh Continent, if you've heard of that game, it's like, it can be jarring. You're just like, how many cards are in the box? Like, how many pages are in this book? So for that reason, I thoroughly enjoy kind of a linear structure, but making sure that there are interaction points embedded in that linear structure so you can still feel engaged with the content and you still feel a personal connection to your journey as you play through the game.
So silly follow-up, because I'm playing Tears as well. I'm almost to the end. What is your preferred? Okay, yeah, I'm a busy boy, Wally. What do you want? It's a big. I'm like 500 hours in that game. It's so big. What is your preferred? What's your favorite vehicle?
What's my favorite vehicle?
Yeah. How do you like to get around?
In Tears? Oh, I personally just like the fire. Just making fire and then just like jumping. Yeah, I mean, your hang glide. I don't need this. I don't need this, Nick. So I'm naturally.
Are you using pine cones or?
To start fires.
Welcome to the Tears of the Kingdom
Yeah.
panel. We're gonna
Yeah.
talk
So,
about expert
anyways,
strats.
I think that Tears of the Kingdom Link is the hot. No, just kidding. No, I mean, I don't know, man. Boats, rafts, pieces of wood.
Great answer, Duke. I know you played. What's your favorite mode of conveyance?
There was one right answer to that, and it was the fan bike. Yeah.
Okay.
Hang on. Okay. Follow up first. Triple fan bike or double fan bike?
Oh, I'm a double fan biker.
I don't want anymore.
All right, course correcting. Scott asked fan to the side or front and back? Front back like a motorcycle. Okay. All right, right on. All right, we've solved. The great debate has been solved. So let's talk about.
Mention the shields. The shield surfing.
The shield surfing, yes.
Classic, because otherwise it's just too technological. You're just a boy with a.
Well, I mean, just play Breath of the Wild at that point, man.
How shameful of I mean, I was going to ask what my favorite Tears of the Kingdom
What is is your favorite Tears of the Kingdom vehicle?
I have never played a Zelda game in my life, so I would like to say that my favorite way to traverse in a video game is web swinging, because it will never get better than that.
Are you talking like 2004 Spider-Man?
Okay, all right. No, full stop. We're done now. I'm so sorry I led us here.
Are you a two-fan web swinger or a three-fan web swinger?
Let's talk about the player cards for a moment. So when you set out to give us the player card expansion, were there any specific goals for the design?
We wanted to continue to further different things. I think when Maxine and I talked about it, Maxine helped with the initial stuff on the investigator box. And we kind of established some goals for it. Obviously, we wanted to explore Bless and Curse further. There was a lot more for us to play around with that. We wanted to explore melee weapons getting better because they needed to get better, I guess. And we wanted to play around with other elements like doubles. We'd experimented with one in Scarlet Keys, and we wanted to explore what that could look like as a suite in this one. But by and large, it kind of arose from, all right, what would these characters who are coming to the island, each of the different characters, the investigators in the box, what would they do? What would they want? And also, what kind of gets at this festive or this, the festive air that we're going for.
I'm sorry, Waleed was whispering in my ear. Could you repeat the question?
Design goals for the player cards of Hemlock Vale.
Yeah. My design goal was to make the best blue cards that I could. But beyond that, no, Bless and Curse was a lot of fun to revisit that and find ways to use those tokens in ways that hadn't been done with Innsmouth. That was very exciting. And what was the other big one that came? Like you mentioned Bless and Curse, and you mentioned doubles. Bonded was the other one. That's right, yes. And Bonded is another one. That's one of my favorite mechanics ever. I had to ask because I cannot remember which box we're working on with what. But yes, Bonded is one of my favorite mechanics in Arkham because it changes the way that your cards just interact as part of your deck. And suddenly your deck becomes, you have a sideboard suddenly that can come into play. And so it was really, really fun to be like, how can we take Bonded cards and not only do new things with them, but also make them apply to Bless and Curse that we didn't do before, and make them apply to parlay stuff because now we have a big parlay focus in the box because of Alessandra. So it was really fun to take exciting previous mechanics that were separated by expansions and now mash them together and see what that playground, that toolbox of what we can come up with.
So this game is lucky enough to have survived long enough that we basically have churned through the entire pre-existing roster of characters from the Arkham series. So I'm always kind of curious at this stage, how do you decide, all right, now's the time for Kate Winthrop to enter the game versus, okay, we should probably invent a new character for the box? Like, how do those discussions get had?
At length. That's how those discussions get had. But yeah, I think part of it is what are we excited to design for next? What characters, obviously, have we not seen so far? Obviously, with Hemlock, like that list was growing shorter and shorter of characters from Eldritch and other that hadn't come over to the card game yet. But again, it was kind of a thematic thing. Like when looking at the box, it's like, oh yeah, we're going to an island. We want someone who talks to people. We're going to an island on a botanical survey. Well, the scientists would want to come along. We've got folk horror. We got the farmhand there. So like those different elements come into play when we're thinking about which investigators.
I'm going to ask, since we know who's in the Drowned City box, can I use an example from Drowned City? Okay, I got a thumbs up. And it's not always clear too when we set out with a roster of investigators. A lot of times it's very clear who's going to be what class, but it's not always, and sometimes that can be a little malleable. And in an example from Drowned City, Michael McGlenn, first thing that comes to mind is Rogue, but there was a little bit of time where we're like, could he be Blue? Could he be Guardian because of his story and because of the role that he serves in that narrative?
Were you the only one asking that question?
No, I was saying no, he is green. He is not blue. Yeah, it's me in front of the mirror. Yeah, I'm standing here staring at the guy in the mirror saying, but what if more Guardians? And that sounds like a great future. But no, so it's not always like, even though it is sometimes clear at the outset, we do still have discussions about what if there were an adjustment? What would that mean for this character? What would that signify about their story now versus how it was in Eldritch or in Arkham Second or Arkham Third or whatever they came out in? And so it even after we have a plan, quote unquote, it still changes, and we still adjust as needed.
So, Waleed, I know when you started on Arkham, you walked into a wall of a roster. All the DLC was downloaded, everything was unlocked. So, at this point, do you have any favorite either investigators or archetypes to play?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I think that my favorite investigator is good old Carson. I am. Really? Who'd you expect?
You can say Father Mateo.
Oh yeah, I love Father Mateo too because he's just crazy. He's like, oh, I don't know what's going. Anyway, but yeah, this is really good audio. Just me being like, but oh yeah. Sorry, no. What is this? So Carson is the best, and I'll tell you why. You might not be the lead investigator. You might not be charming and succeeding all the tests in the world, but you know what you are is a solid foundation and a solid foundation and floor for everybody else around you, and you just lift everybody up. So if you don't die, then you surely are all going to succeed. And that is why I like Carson. My archetypes are often support roles. I'm a huge fan of just like a healing class in an MMO or like any other just way to support. So yeah, Carson's my jam. Father Mateo he is so goofy, and I love him for that. Yeah, and I honestly like Kohaku a lot too. So good job, guys. Yeah, so Carson's the best. As far as classes, anything that's not Guardian or Survivor, I'm pretty excited about. Except for Carson? Well, Carson doesn't but he's not like, punch me in the face. He's like, I'm old, please don't punch me, but also like somebody get in front of me. He's great for that reason. And I'm a huge fan of that. But also, Mystics, I think, is where it's at, to be honest with you, because you're always playing with fire, and you are going to get burnt. It's just a matter of time, and that's always fun. Oh, no? Okay, all right.
Yeah. Okay. So if you had to pin it down to a favorite investigator let's say favorite build to come out of playtesting Hemlock, what would it be?
So people know, you guys know, I am a Guardian player. I got the pin on my hat for Pete's sake, and I love Wilson. And I think when Wilson came out and people played with him, there was a lot of like uncertainty. And I think that as people played with him, they came to realize, like, oh, no, there's actually depth here. You just kind of have to dig for it a little bit, and he just operates a little differently. I guess I'm done talking about Guardian. Higher up. So anyway, my favorite... Like this. Okay. I can do visual gags for an audio podcast. I've been doing it this whole time. You don't get to tell me what to do. You guys, the audience never sees it, but I'm at home in front of my computer doing like all this stuff, and anyway. So yes, Wilson's great. I love Wilson, and he's a lot of fun. But I think my favorite character from the box is Kohaku. He is wild. He is probably my favorite mystic. I think he might be pushing Luke out. I think Luke might have gotten shoved into the gate box by Kohaku. He's just so much fun. There's so much you can do with him. And the tools in Hemlock combined with the tools from Innsmouth make him a very powerful investigator. And his stats are great. His stats are so good. Like, he's a 3 combat mystic. What's not to love, So that's me.
For me, it'd probably be Kate Winthrop. I love Kate. I really wanted to play around with clues on assets, and I liked the idea of them sort of portraying like, oh, you're researching. You've got your lab out. You've got your kit out. I was a big Netrunner player, and, Big Rig Kate was where it was at. So she'd probably be my favorite, but I love all of them. Kohaku's pretty great, too.
All right, so returning to the campaign for a minute, I think the art in this campaign has some of the most ridiculously beautiful pieces, especially the ones that are all about like the aberration of nature. So like the bear, the cochlear stag sticks out. A lot of the landscapes where there's like crystalline light shining through the trees, like all that sort of stuff. Do you have a favorite? Are there any art briefs that come to mind that were particularly ridiculous, fun, and or hard to flesh out?
I think my favorite art piece is the Celadrin hybrid from The Thing in the Depths. That and I wasn't involved in writing that. I just saw it, and I was like, that's... Just look at this little guy. Like, you don't want to hurt him. He's so cool. He's just this big turtle with a flower on him. So that's great. But the one that writing the art brief for, I was disturbing myself finding the reference images for it. And I was like, boy, this artist is going to have a weird time. I cannot remember the name of the monster, but it's one of the double-sided ones in Lost Sister. It's the one that it's this big horseshoe crab with this long tail, and then when it flips to night side, it's reared up, and it's got all the legs and everything, and you see how big it is compared to the investigator. And I remember looking up the images for horseshoe crabs, particularly their undersides, so what that looks like. The frilled shark, which was not a shark I was aware of at first, but I was like, ooh, that's creepy, let's use that. And then dead deep-sea anglerfish and just stuff like that. And I was like, I don't even like looking at these references that I'm putting in this. So the art's going to turn out great, I know it. And it did. I loved it so much.
Yeah, there's so much of the art in the campaign I love, but I'd probably have to say Empyrean Brilliance, that one treachery of the woman sort of shattering into a bunch of different versions, like horse, and it kind of looks horrifying, but it's also beautiful. That's my favorite one.
All right, so now let's talk about the bear. So the bear is a truly terrifying and oppressive boss, and knowing you, Duke, I can only imagine that the original design was even worse. So what was it like dialing that in?
Oh gosh. I wanted him to be terrifying. That's why he's got the 3 damage and 2 horror or whatever. He hits hard, and you should be scared of him. And that was like kind of the thesis of the night scenarios, right? You were just running for your life, and you can fight him. That's cool. Go ahead. But like he's coming after you regardless. So I would say he started off pretty difficult, and obviously, especially night 1, the Twisted Hollow was one where we wanted to be very intentional about the difficulty, and it was very straightforward to balance for that, because players are only going to have so much XP, so they're going into this scenario with this amount pretty much usually set. So I would say, yeah, the bear went from really awful to just the right kind of awful when we went through playtesting with him.
Because I distinctly remember a couple of discussions when we're going over playtester feedback, and we get notes like, Twisted Hollow is a fun scenario. It feels like you're lost in the woods. That bear is too hard. And I remember like reading that out loud and then like looking to Duke on camera, and he's just like, okay. All right, well, no discussion there. Like, great, we got message received, moving on. So, like, yeah, no, Duke's right. Like, it is scary, but that was exactly the theme going for it, so I think it worked out.
I loved the bear so much that I put him in the second night scenario, too. There was this joke with the playtesters that, like, oh, yeah, he's the real final boss. We're just going to patch him into the finale, too.
I did find it particularly mean that you let us kill it, and then it still comes back. Wow, that was magical. No. The Twisted Hollow is actually one of the scenarios I was going to call out that really, really felt dripping with the theme it was trying to achieve. It really feels like you are like trudging through the forest by the light of a failing lamp, just assailed by all of the forest creatures. What inspired that design?
Zelda, actually. I think the idea that I had for it I was playing Breath of the Wild, and there's that shrouded shrine, that shrouded island that's just pitch black, and like, yeah, it's terrifying. And I walked away from that thinking of like, okay, what if the investigators were lost in the woods and like really only had this one light source? Obviously, you can bring flashlights, but those don't count. But I wanted to get at that feeling of like, we're lost in the woods and everything around us is dangerous. How can we put that into the game? And so that was the core thread of that scenario.
The other one I really wanted to call out, Nikki, you mentioned it already, was The Thing in the Depths. That one kind of stands out mechanically to me in particular as kind of like this cool movement puzzle / escort mission. Where did it? I guess where did that start?
And that was one that I worked on a lot. But the structure and the rhythm of it was already established by the time I got my hands on it. But that was really fun because my goal was to make it so that to provide multiple avenues to success, and each one would kind of require a different strategy or a different approach from the investigators. And like I said, that turtle art was just so good. Like I wanted that guy to feel like the centerpiece, and Duke guided me on that and said that this is the scenario to really kind of showcase elusive as a keyword, and it was fun to do that on an enemy that you didn't want to kill, and instead, rather than you chasing one down because it keeps running away from you, it's instead you're trying to herd it to the target location, and so all of those things kind of congealed or came together to create the thing in the depths that we have now.
Yeah, a little bit of trivia as well. Michael Boggs from Netrunner fame helped with initial stuff on the scenario, and the Bog scenario was the one that he provided an initial design for. So the thing that I remember in conversations that he wanted to rally around was the idea of we're sinking into the depths. So putting damage on the locations to represent okay, you can't stay anywhere for very long. That provided a big thread for the scenario to make it kind of provide that constant pressure.
So it's always interesting to see how the more abstract horror elements from Lovecraftian horror and just kind of cosmic horror in general get translated into the game. So I'm very curious on the finale, both parts of it, and the Cosmic Emissary. Kind of what was your approach? What inspired the design? What made you decide to go that way with it?
I'm a huge fan of cosmic horror, and I think a big part of cosmic horror, of real well-executed cosmic horror, is that unknowability. I mean, we say it a lot in Arkham, and we say it a lot with a lot of the different horrible things that our investigators encounter, but in thinking about what this final boss would be, I wanted to get at that feeling that there was something truly beyond. And so I wanted it to be inscrutable, but it's also sort of a jumbled mess. It sort of jumbles you up. And that's core to what the Color Out of Space's story has as well. The color is truly inscrutable. We don't know why it's there. Is it malevolent? Is it not? We don't really know. It just happens to be there, and by virtue of it being there, it is destroying the things around it, or rather twisting them, So I think that was a guiding piece for the Cosmic Emissary, was that it was beyond our understanding, and the rest of it fell into place. And also, I'm a huge Castlevania fan, and I thought of Legion with all the sort of twisted bodies sort of leading into it as well. That was a big piece of that as well.
As far as the actual mechanical enemy within the game, first of all, the visual sweep of that is awesome with the art fitting together like that. Did you have prior versions of that? Did that come together really quickly? How did that come to be?
I always knew I wanted it to be a big multi-part boss, and I really liked the idea of playing around with that however that could look. Making it ever present at every location and forcing players to think about it constantly, because the color is everywhere with you, on Hemlock Isle, but that's where it's most concentrated, right? So you cannot get away from it in many respects, and that's why it's this big enemy.
Waleed, do you have a favorite Lovecraft story or setting or creature, anything along those lines that
So coming into Arkham, to be fully transparent, I had played Arkham Horror in I think 2020 for the first time. I got the old core set. We tried to play it with all the cards in the core set. The decks are so good. So we succeeded really easily. And so but somehow. I had moved away from Arkham. Maybe you'll learn more about where I went. But when later, I'm teeing myself up for future questions. Yeah. Yeah, but any hoozle. So when I got hired, I didn't have the background of Arkham and of H.P. Lovecraft that Duke and Nick both had coming in as huge fans of the game. But I do come from a world of fantasy, and I am super passionate about just like whimsical, magical things. And so I love the setting of the Dreamlands. That is my favorite setting. There are floating islands. There are flying ships. There's giant, like, goat people. So that fits right at home with me. And I love the mystery and the connection between our own worlds and this fantastical world and how easily we can be lost in that space. So for me, that's my favorite setting, and those are my favorite suites of stories.
So, in Hemlock Vale, what is your favorite modular encounter set from that campaign? And as far as like mechanics or art or however you'd quantify that.
I don't remember this is just a theme. I don't remember the name of this. I don't remember the name of the encounter set. I don't remember everything that's in it, but I do remember it has the mushroom zombie, the fungus zombie, and I remember. Is that the name? Is that the Corpse Lichen? Thank you. Yes. And I remember reading the card before ever playing with it and going like, "Oh, this seems pretty rough," and then playing with it and being like, "Oh my God, this is insane." And it much like a lot of the stuff, it started off really hard and got toned down a little bit, but it's still a really difficult enemy. And I just love the idea of this zombie that is it is reanimated simply because of the plants and the fungus and everything that's infesting it. That one card stands out more than probably any other ones in the set. So whatever set that's from, that's the set that I like.
I think for me, it would probably be, so many of them. I love all of them, but I'm going to stop talking like, a mom with her beautiful kids.
A hypothetical person is putting them in hypothetical danger, and you must choose.
Yes. Okay. Fine. Horrors in the Rock. Actually, I with the Chroma Blight and the Crystal Parasite, that's like a piece of design that I'm particularly proud of because you just know it's coming. And then like the art's so cool too, just watching, like we definitely included references to the chest burster from Alien. So yeah, was really happy how the art of that turned out and also how the design turned out.
That would have been my favorite too. I love that art. So now that the campaign is out in the wild, is there anything that you feel that you nailed? Is there anything you'd like kind of change or wish you had more time to develop at this point? They're both breathing and thinking.
Sure, yeah, I got it. As far as what I wish I had more time to develop, I do love the thing in the depths, and I think it's a great scenario. I wish I had a little bit more time to dial in the difficulty. It's just really easy to go one of the routes to success, and that's obvious. And I misjudged how important everybody thinks agility is. So I go, well, I guess you just evade the enemies and problem solved. So whatever. I mean, I punch my problems. So, but as far as what I'm very proud of, I'm very proud, and we talked about this at the beginning, of creating a much more human story in Arkham Horror. And like I said, when I came on, that was important to me to be like, yeah, cosmic horror is great and all, and the big bads and Cthulhu and Hester and all them are awesome, and I love them, and they're very, very not encouraged. Well, I can't think of the word. Captivating. Thank you. That's good. They're very, very captivating parts of the mythos, but I'm much more interested in, at least at that time I was, of exploring what cosmic horror does to the individual, what it does to people and to a community. And I do think that we really nailed that as a narrative for Feast.
Yeah, I mean, I feel really proud of the campaign. I'd say I've been watching and listening to a lot of the community reception and different things people are saying, and I'm really encouraged by the feedback that we've gotten. I think if there was something that I wish we'd had more time for development to really make the night versions of some of the day scenarios stand out even more. I wish we'd come up with some more little gimmicks, sort of like what we did with Written in Rock's night version. So if there's anything that I wish we could have done more, it would have been that, because I just loved exploring and kind of fleshing out each different area of the island. And as for, I don't know, I'm just really humbled by the reception I've gotten from the community so far about Hemlock, and it's great seeing you enjoy and play with the thing that I enjoyed and loved putting my heart and soul into. So thank you all.
All right, before we switch to opening up to a few questions from you guys, Waleed, since you teed me up so nicely earlier, where did you go after your first brush with Arkham?
What a fantastic question. So when the pandemic hit, I was working I was an educational interactive designer, but I have studied games for education and games for change for quite some time. So when I hit Arkham, after that, the pandemic happened. Something happened for like 3 years. I don't remember. The pandemic happened, and so I was locked away, and that's when I was really cycling through a lot of board games, and I stumbled upon. So can I just answer like what my favorite game is? Is that cool? Yeah. All right, cool. What's that?
What is your favorite game?
What a crazy good question too. Wow, you're nailing it. So after, like cooperative games will always be my favorite. I think that games are really impactful and like powerful and empowering when you're playing with other people. Not to like put down anybody who loves a solo game. I just am not one of those people because I really love working together. I mean, my favorite character is Carson. Like, I'm not like true soloing Carson through all the campaigns, right? Like, and so cooperative games have always been really meaningful to me, and it's been really fun to see the board game and card game space play with these semi-cooperative games. And saying that, one of my favorite games is by a studio called IV Games. They make some of the highest quality games. If you're a huge board game fan, they make Moonrakers and Veiled Fate, and those two are far in between. Far in between. How does that saying go, Nick? Far and away. Is that really how it is? Far and away. So far and away. Yeah, English is my first language, but I'm still crap at it. But anyways, so Veiled Fate takes on the role of like your demigods, and you have to cooperate with other people to get your you play as a god, and you have to get your spawnlings, your demigods, but you have to like trick people into helping you, and so that's been really exciting. And then also Moonrakers is a game where you want to succeed, but you also are like, please come help me, I'll give you 2 coins, like, please. And so that kind of like semi-cooperative is always a really unique and great space to play. That being said, also any art game like Dixit or Mysterium or Obscurio, those are always going to be the best games ever. So yeah, pandemic time happened. I got locked in my house with my pandemic homies, and we ended up playing just a bunch of like co-op and semi-co-op games, and it was great. Which is weird because Arkham should have been there, but I just cried after losing and never went back. So
everyone has their first brush with the Ghoul Priest. It's fine. Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. All right, excellent. Well, I think we'll open it up to some questions. As a reminder, the the Ghoul Priest hat is wonderful. So as a reminder, the devs cannot answer any questions about future products, and let's keep it nice and friendly. I'm sure I don't need to say. Yeah, so the question was, aside from video games, are there any horror setting stories that inspire the devs?
I think this is going to be part of Duke's answer as well, but given the nature of the Feast of Hemlock Vale, I am a huge fan of what I don't know if this is the exact subgenre, but I call it bizarre science fiction. And specifically what I'm talking about when I say that are books like Roadside Picnic, the Southern Reach trilogy, which is Annihilation and Authority and whatever the middle book is called, I forget now. Acceptance is a third one, thank you, yes. And Hemlock really, especially, I mean, talking about the bear, if anyone has seen the movie adaptation of Annihilation, you have been horrified by that bear, and now you're horrified by the bear in Hemlock. I really love that man versus nature, but not like just in a survival, but where nature itself has just gone insane. That's so compelling to me, the bleakness and the solitude. And so those influences really came through, I think, in Feast. And there are other influences I'd love to talk about, but we can't talk about future products. So I will save those for a year from now, I guess.
Yeah, I would say, obviously, I'm a huge horror fan. I had a Shudder subscription for some time. And I would say, I mentioned Midsommar and Annihilation as big pieces, folk horror, of course. Hemlock House, weirdly inspired by Hausu, the Japanese horror film, about a house that wants to eat people. So yeah, there's a lot of different pieces, but it's hard to kind of name any one right now. But I like a lot of prestige horror, I'd say, like the arty kind of horror stuff.
Yeah, so I, as somebody whose favorite book series is Terry Pratchett, horror is scary to me, and I cry a lot. That being said, what is this game? What? That being said, my favorite horror is psychological horror, and especially psychological horror that taps into not being able to trust your senses and not being able to trust your surroundings. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but that kind of horror really strikes a chord with me. That keeps me up at night. I start to question my own reality. Existential crises abound. So yeah, for me, it's psychological horror. I don't like the gory stuff. I don't like the jump scares. It's all about that getting inside somebody's head and just twisting them up. Yeah.
Oh, Duke thought of one.
Well, he just reminded me of like my favorite horror film. It is a horror film of all time, Perfect Blue. Satoshi Kon's Perfect Blue, which is like an ultimate psychological mind screw.
So my partner and I really enjoyed playing Hemlock, and she loves animals. And so playing with the Chilean hybrid, that was the first scenario we played. She loved that. Then we played Lost Sister, and a dog died, and she was not okay. Will one of you fess up to being the person who was responsible for killing the dog?
Who? Waleed's gone. Who killed the dog?
So I did write the narrative text and the art briefs for that scenario. So I was the one who put words to, there's two parts to this story, who put words to page that turned that into a reality. However, Duke, is there anything you'd like to say about this?
Pleading the fifth?
I'm just saying, look at the cat owner who killed the dog.
Wedge issues. Resorting to wedge issues. We got it. So the question was, Hemlock Knight scenarios kind of guide you towards specific scenarios in a specific order. How did you guys decide how to, quote unquote, punish the players for walking off that path?
I mean, obviously, you don't get all the story beats. Like, you miss out on the major story beats on the first and second nights if you skip them. So obviously, I would say that the preferred way to play Hemlock would probably be to follow like the story the first time you play it. Not that you have to. I would say though that like we tried to sort of the preludes and the interludes and all that stuff sort of forms the narrative thread. So what it came down to was essentially like, okay, we have to trust that the night effects on these creatures are going to punish players in a different way, and I think they do. You have to play them differently depending on whether it's night or day. And we also had to just sort of trust that enemy and that treachery design would carry over there. And like I said, I wish we'd had more time to set them apart a little bit more. But yeah, that was kind of how we approached it.
But it's so many cat tokens.
Yes, it is.
Is the question, why is my bag full of Elder things? All right, I feel bad for everyone that I paraphrased poorly, and Justin offered to walk the mic around for a second, so in penance, I'm now going to do the running around. Morton, I saw you with your hand up. We'll go this way first.
Yeah, I would like to hear your thoughts about designing a story with momentum and progress when you're designing open world, because it struck me in Hemlock that on the second night you witnessed some pretty gruesome stuff, and then on the next morning the team are just, we're going to explore the island some more. And so the last two campaigns have been quite open world in this. Is it difficult to write a story when you have to be able to play like everything in the order that you choose?
That was definitely the challenge was, again, like what I had to latch onto when we were thinking through the story text is thinking of Rosa Marquez as one of the main characters and following that as like the backbone of the story. And so everything else fell into place around that. But yeah, when we were writing the different preludes, we had to take into account the idea that players could have experienced the most dramatic thing in their Arkham Horror career on the second night, or they didn't. And so that, yeah, I'd say that's where that's coming from.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're writing a fixed medium like prose like that, like written narrative, you can't account for everything, and so you kind of have to, especially in something with as many degrees of variance as even Hemlock has, you have to kind of write in the middle, and to account for all of that, and it can be a little jarring sometimes. And there's, and we talked earlier about things that if we had a little bit more time, that might have been something that we might have looked at a little closer. But to circle it back to the previous question, like those night scenarios, we definitely did want to, those were the scenarios some of the scenarios that we really, really focused on. We wanted those to knock out of the park. We wanted people to be very impressed with them. The Twisted Hollow, Longest Night. Those are some of the, in my opinion, the most memorable scenarios in the campaign. And so that was why, like you said, you get kind of punished for not playing those. It's because those are the best ones in the box. Play those. But, follow your heart and all that garbage too.
I can't speak directly to Hemlock, obviously, but what I can speak to is as a game designer trying to create an open world, you strike a great question, which is like tonally, how is it all fitting together? That is the hardest question to answer, especially because playtesting for those things is so difficult because of all the branching narratives. And you want to give autonomy to the players to tell their own story, but you don't know where they're going to go with it. So yeah, I just wanted a second, like, yeah, that's a fantastic question. If you get the answer, please just give me a call at 76. Okay.
One of the other things is in the revision process, I remember I would go through and make sure to read everything like exhaustively, like, oh, if they go here, if they do this, trying to make sure that it was as coherent as possible.
As a solo player, predominantly solo player, Fate of the Veil keeps me up at night. How like easy is it to balance, the dials that you can adjust with the dials that you can't adjust versus player count? Because there's certain things that are in the mechanics that don't change with player counts, i.e. encounter deck size.
I will be the first to say that I don't think Fate of the Veil is very kind to solo players. So for your pain, my heart goes out to you, and I'm so sorry. I do want you to feel pain, but in the good kind of way, in the Arkham cruel way. But yeah, the only thing I'll speak to that is we definitely have ways that we'd like to see players tune certain experiences like that might come in the future. But I do agree. I do think that solo for Fate of the Veil is particularly tough. And so if you were a solo player and have played Fate of the Veil, I'm sorry for version 3. Maybe we'll give you, a fix someday.
I'm just going to echo what you said and say that it is a very difficult task. The biggest problem that we deal with solo design in Arkham is the variance, and you bring up encounter deck size, and that's a huge part of it. But yeah, like Duke said, we're exploring other options in future stuff, so keep your eyes open.
So the back of the act cards in the preludes, they're not legal gameplay areas, right? There's no way for the player to read them. So how do you go about putting stuff there, knowing that some people aren't even going to engage with it, but others are going to be going, let me flip that as soon as I can because I know it's out of bounds?
I will say that when I most recently played Hemlock Vale, I absent-mindedly flipped one of them myself. So I deserve all the pain as well. I'd say it's just one of those things where it's like, I wanted to put like a fun Easter egg for characters or for players. I also like lulling players into a false sense of security if I can. So that's kind of the the idea behind the prelude acts.
I'm just, and like Hemlock isn't the first time that we've seen something like that. Like there was it a Carcosa was the one where you take 100 horror and didn't Circle Undone. You become hunted, and then that has special text, and that has always tickled me as a player. Like I love those moments in Arkham. I think of the very first time was like Rougarou, where I flip over a card and it says if you've done X, Y, Z, and I'm like, where does that come in? I love those little hidden things where it's like, hey, if you know, you know, and if you don't, go figure it out. And so those little moments are very exciting from my perspective.
I think that's a really fun space to play with. Any time that we can connect as designers to you all, especially if you get curious and you do things you shouldn't be doing, any time we can bridge that fourth wall, I think it's such a fun experience as a player, for me personally as a player. And so, yeah, that's all I had to say, but it's super enjoyable, super great.
I do think it's a particular achievement that in a card game you make us afraid to read cards. That is exactly why I don't read my cards. I'm afraid of the last 30%.
With the game being pretty long in its longevity at this point, in very general terms, obviously you can't talk about future stuff, but what kind of design spaces are you still interested in kind of exploring with, obviously we have a lot that's already there, but kind of what things are you generally thinking about as you're developing new stuff?
So for me personally, I love, I kind of exactly related to the last question. I love the playfulness that we can embed. That design space is so fun for me, is just to make some weird stuff that you're like, what's happening? And then make you take a step back. These two have to rein me in all the time. I'll be like, wouldn't it be crazy? And they're like, shut up, that's stupid. But
I don't know if I ever say your ideas are stupid.
Okay, I feel it, I hear it. Yeah, moronic, I'm sorry, moronic. But no, like that, so that for me is, there is such a longevity and there are mechanics that are starting to build on one another, but I think there's still a grand vault of playfulness to play with, yeah.
With it being so long, you're rewarding people that have been here with a lot.
Yeah, and like connecting, because it's a narrative game, and that's what makes Arkham very special to me, is that it's a narrative game and you're telling a story and you're creating in your mind's eye, you're creating this voyage. And so, yeah, absolutely rewarding that passion and rewarding that adventure. For me, that's the design space that I love. Have I given you guys enough time to think?
It's hard. Duke?
One of the things that I think of when designing for Arkham, one of the first goals I always bring to the table is we want to show you something you haven't seen before. And so when we revisit old mechanics, I want us to revisit them with a twist or show them in a new light. We're using those old mechanics that maybe have already been established in the game's life as building blocks to be like, oh, but what if it were this way? How do we play with, it could totally figure into a different scenario in a different way. So I think we kind of view the old bits as building blocks, but at the end of the day, I still feel like there's so much more to explore. There's a huge world, both thematically and mechanically. So as far as I'm concerned, the future is horrifying and apocalyptic, which is Arkham's equivalent of bright and wonderful.
All right, we can do one more, I think. Duke picks you, sir. And all right, fine. Waleed picks 1, 2. Nick.
Just a few more. First, shout out for Waleed, who has just been awesome. I only just met him this morning. He was happy to lend me Tommy and an exploding goat, so I could play I can get those back to you. Yeah, just a moment, just to ask the question so you can start thinking. Is there any chance we're ever going to get a Guardian with like decent agility?
You heard what I said about agility earlier, right?
I mean, the joke answer is no, we're not. But the real answer is we don't know what, I mean, we do, to a limited extent, we know what the future is, but that's still limited. And we're always exploring new design spaces for every class and how they can interact with the game in different ways. So, I mean, nothing's off the table. That's what I'll say. Anything to add?
I mean, we ask what fits the character, and obviously, like when we're going through the roster of previously defined investigators, that can sometimes dictate what the stat is, but that doesn't mean that we can't create new investigators that might fit that paradigm well. Like, what would a super fast Guardian look like? That's cool. I'd be excited to explore that someday.
So I want to talk about the player cards themselves. I think everyone's talked about the campaign. I think you guys really nailed the set. It's incredible. There's a lot of really cool effects on cards that make you really think, oh, how can I do this? Like Seal of the Elders, where you want to get 2 blesses and 2 curses out. But I actually want to talk about the cards that are a little bit more unassuming. I think even with all the cards in the card pool out, you're still creating some new cards that do something really simple on the tin, but then you start to think about them and use them and say, wait a minute, there's something here. There's something actually kind of special. One of my favorite cards from the set, I think, is Task Force, and you talked about Carson a bit earlier. And you look at it and you say, okay, this is kind of boring. It just says take an activate action, discover a clue, move. What do I need this card for? But then you start to have the gears turn a little bit. I'm playing in a campaign with Philian, and I'm playing Sister Mary, and then you start to think, okay, I can discover a clue, but what if I have Trish discover the clue instead? That's kind of neat. So I'm just curious what your favorite cards are that are in that vein, something that is unassuming and then starts to actually look really cool once you put into play.
I'll answer quick because I know we're running out of time. From Hemlock, specifically, the card that I think when we designed it, and I remember having this conversation with Duke, it felt underpowered. It's a level 0 double mystic card, Antediluvian Hymn, and public reception at first. I haven't been following it, but at first it was like, this is kind of an underpower. It's under the bar, and my response to Duke at that point, and my response to anybody who feels that way, is like, well, play it in Kohaku, the mystic who gets extra actions, and suddenly that double doesn't feel like a problem, and the curses go a long way, and it goes from being, okay, I'll get to look at 5 cards, to suddenly you have a lot of control, and you're able to build part of your kit at the same time. That's one that I liked it, despite it being below the curve compared to other scrying type cards.
Last question, no pressure.
Hey, so I'm asking for our friend here. So they are asking, how do you decide what design elements qualify as being within the theme of Lovecraftian horror and what doesn't? Because some elements seem a bit more verging to things like world mythology or even science fiction. So how do you determine what feels right and what doesn't?
Well, a very easy byline is 1920s, because it's Lovecraftian. But beyond that, I feel like it kind of comes down to how does it feel, but a lot of it also, I think of, you want to tap into the unknown, you want to tap into the esoteric, the occult, the uncanny, the strange, but also you want to have a baseline of, okay, what would people be experiencing and using and dealing with in regular day to day. So it's a balance between, like, we want to really hit the setting, but we also, there's just such a wide world of so many things to draw upon, so many elements from Lovecraft's stories and otherwise. And Lovecraft himself, like, his stories kind of span a bunch of different genres. We've got fantasy in the Dreamlands. We've got more science fiction with The Whisperer and Darkness, and more horror with most everything, So, like, there's a wide range, and it's kind of fun to play around in that range. And I think that's it.
Well, I know I say this every time I get to talk to you guys, but I truly think that one of the things that makes the Arkham community and the game and just being involved in it so special is how connected you guys are to the community and how accessible you are and how you're all showing up at a fan con, and it makes the community feel significantly cozier and just a joy. Sorry, I got on Nick earlier for visual gags, and here I am. But it is a joy to have you guys here. Thank you so much for talking to us about the game. It's an absolute pleasure. Give it up for the devs, guys. And while I have everyone's attention, just a couple thanks I wanted to throw out con-wise. So thanks to Chad, who may or may, did he leave? Oh, come on, Chad, I wanted to thank you in front of people. Yeah, no. where you compliment in public and castigate in private. But yeah, thanks to Chad, he's done a great job of running everything in the background and organizing the massive multiplayer game. So make sure you give him props when he does come back. Big thanks to everyone else who volunteered and helped with running scenarios. That includes the devs. That includes some of you guys. Big future thanks to our lead cultist, Josh, for organizing Iron Man tomorrow. Did Josh leave too? Oh, man, I'm so bad at this. Yes, okay, there it is. We're literally, whoa! A big thanks to my fellow Busters for making this magic happen. We're all obviously involved, but it does bear saying that I think a very special and hopefully loud thanks is owed to our man Justin, because this con... This con is mostly comprised of his sweat and love, and it's been a great weekend so far. So everyone should be so lucky to have a Justin, and everyone did this weekend, so we all feel blessed. And of course, thanks to you guys for coming, because you cannot have a party without guests. So we very much appreciate you coming to our thing, and Justin has a thing to say.
I sure do. We have, I mean, it's only the second one, but the biggest BusterCon ever. We actually are getting close to running out of swag. So many of y'all showed up. So well done.
All right, and in preparation for Iron Man tomorrow, we are going to ask the devs. We're gonna, if you'll indulge us, we are going to draw our weaknesses for And I would love it ever so much if you guys would kill our first partner. All right, so. All right, so we'll do weaknesses first. So, Scott? Let's go stand over here. Yeah, okay, yeah. I doubt this will make it to the recording, but we'll find out.
Oh, I thought we were drawing. No, like, you hold it out. Oh, all right. So
Yeah. Scott, drawing for Harvey. Indebted.
I am okay with this.
We did it. We did it.
That means we got to try again.
I'm running a cheap deck, so.
Justin?
Because it's single collection.
Yeah. Justin drawing for Hank the Tank. We have The Thing That Follows. That seems super okay.
I mean, sure, like a thing I can kill.
Yeah, okay. That's just another thing.
We got to do that one again. Thanks, Duke.
Ian. Drawing for Daryl. We have Quantum Paradox. Put it back! That is the seeker-specific one. No. Psychosis. That seems pretty okay. All right, and last and least, pulling for Kaimani.
Take three.
Leg injury. Oh, no.
Joke's on you, they're all leg injuries.
I am a coward, and I reject my fate. No one look at me. Kleptomania. It's been all right.
The thief.
All right. Let's kill a partner.
Yeah! Let's push someone out of an airplane.
Let's shove someone out of a moving plane.
As I'd like to say, this plane is going down, and we need to suddenly lose 120 to 250 pounds so the plane can not.
Let me ask a question real quick now, because you guys all listen to Mythos Busters, and I listen to it too now. I'm a consumer. There's this thing that they have invented called plot armor. Is that in effect right now?
Yes. Do we have to decide before?
You have to tell me. I'm asking you.
Kensler, right?
Did we make a mistake going Kensler?
We'll know in a minute.
Yeah, all right.
All right.
Go ahead and draw, Duke.
Well, here.
I am your MC now. Ooh, which one? Which one has Kensler's aura? Which one? Yeah. Oh. Oh my God! Are you cowards and do you reject your fate? You do. Oh. Let it be known that it was decided it was Kensler, but they are.
This one's going to be Claypool. Not Claypool, not Claypool. William Dyer. Oh, boy, is he ever a Dyer.
Well, that was anticlimactic.
All right, well, thanks, everyone. If you haven't had your weakness drawn you'd like, we're up here now. Otherwise, let's all skedaddle.